Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today is March 17, 2025. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. Please subscribe. Also want to thank the great David James for having a party. He had all these great parties, and that's where I met Scott, but it might have been in Ann Arbor at the film festival. Scott MacDonald, what an honor and a pleasure. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from central New York State, a little town called New Hartford.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
You know, it's funny because right now, every place I go, students are asking faculty, what's your favorite film? And I've battled with this issue my whole life because it's like asking a literature person, what's your favorite sentence?
I thought you were going to say book there. Yeah.
No, I don't know. I the best thing is finding what you love to do, what you can't keep yourself from doing, and getting paid for doing it. That's about
that is really good. And that's funny because that is the next question is, what's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Well, some of it depends on where you are in life. I mean,
Yeah.
I was as an undergraduate, I was a math major. I thought I was a math major. I grew up under the shadow of Sputnik, and I don't know how old are you?
I was born in 53. What year are you born?
42.
Yeah. Okay. We're 9 years difference.
So in that moment, when Sputnik went up, the United States went hysterical and wanted to train everyone to be an engineer.
Yeah.
It was very prestigious to work in mathematics, and it was the first time in school that it seemed to matter that I was interested. We were in this advanced math class. I mean, I was probably one of the weakest students in that class, but we'd stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning to solve a problem, and it was very exciting. And it was, I didn't know what you did with mathematics. In fact, that was what came to seem to me a problem in the field. They never explained what it was all for. But anyway, I get to college and I realize, no, what I want, and I had to flunk all my classes my sophomore year to prove to everyone that I wasn't going to be a math major, that I wanted to read literature.
Yeah.
And for for like 35 years, I was a literature person. Loved to read, still loved it, loved to teach it. And then there's a certain point where, and I think this is partly because it's harder and harder for me to see. I don't know whether text is getting, I think it's both things. Text is getting so small that a normal person with eyesight can't read it.
Yeah.
And I'm getting older, so my eyes are getting tired, but I can see film. And somehow I made this transition. I remember the moment of the transition, but so I love looking at film as my way.
We're gonna get into that specific transition, but two things really quick. So I'm for anecdotes, stories, and tangents. Go off don't feel you have to answer the question. You can go wherever you want. But did you become a reader, one, because your parents told you to, two, they did it as an example, or three, on your own?
It was totally on my own. In fact, I'm so glad I went away to college. And when I was going away to college, this was before phones were inexpensive, automatic. So when I was in college, I could not be within my parents' purview at all. And what I did was, I kind of, looking back, I think I kind of consciously flunked everything my sophomore year because I discovered in high school a poem by Carl Sandburg called Fog. Fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over city and harbor and then moves on, something like that. And it was the first time that a haiku struck me as literature, struck me as art. And I can't even explain the impact. I certainly couldn't have explained it to anybody else at that point.
Yeah.
By the end of my first year of college, I knew I wanted to read literature. I don't know where that came from. My parents were very disappointed. I became an English major. Oh my God. I wasn't going to be an engineer, It was a horrible thing. I mean,
well, you're so cool, Scott. I appreciate this. Well, everything will come back around. You'll see. It's cyclical it's like a Mobius strip. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I think we can't help it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just humans. I've been
Yeah.
when we were young, people didn't think animals had personalities. It's like a really weird idea. I mean, I sit here and I hear the dogs in the neighborhood communicating with each other. They know each other. I mean, I had an experience. This is way off topic, but I had what probably will be my final schnauzer. I had this wonderful dog, and we used to take a walk every morning. And on a certain block, my schnauzer would run up and meet this other dog, and they would just sniff a little bit, and then we'd move on. And the few days after I had to put Trixie down, I took that walk myself just for the heck of it. And that dog sees me coming down the street without Trixie and goes crazy.
Wow.
And the owner comes out and says, I have never seen him act like this ever. So those dogs know each other. Beings know each other. I just watched Into the Wild. Is that what it's called? That film about the guy who tries to go into Alaska and survive on his own.
Yeah.
And the result is that he can't do it alone. He dies trying to do it alone.
Yeah.
So I think we don't have a choice.
But you're implying, and I have to ask the next question anyways, is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
I think it's both. I mean, I think we have this brain in order to be able to do certain things. It's like, I mean, what would you do with yourself if you didn't have something to do?
Yeah, you might be happy and peace out. But that's funny because, some of these early questions, is it more this or more that? I mean, when you were talking, you were like, well, it's hardwired in animals, it's hardwired in this. But then when I asked the question, you said it's both. That's what I like, is to get deeper and get into the, it's like, Scott, it's me and you versus the wording on the questions. So here's the next one. I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank.
This will sound like this will be an annoying answer. I don't know what I think until I know what I think.
That's right. That's fine. That's not annoying.
I've always been very slow.
Yeah.
In fact, I used to go to I still will go this year, but I used to go to the Flaherty Film Seminar, and the shtick at that seminar is, theoretically, you don't have any information about what the next film's going to be. And so you watch the film that's shown, and then you go into this big discussion room with 150 people and talk about it.
Yeah.
I can do that. I don't know what I think for a while. It takes a while for me to know what I think.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's beautiful. That's Ann Arbor. For 40 years, there wasn't descriptions of the film. There was the title and the filmmaker's name, and maybe it was from. I don't even want, my film festival's 35 years old. I don't put the running time. I don't want anything. The title is already biasing you, but that's fine. I know what you're saying. But see, McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. Can humans think without language?
I guess I would say I don't know what I think until I know what I think, and I know what I think when I can write it.
That is really good. You're expanding on it. When I can write it. Yeah. I say, Scott, mine is I don't know what I think until I ask other people what they think, and then I might know what I think.
Oh.
But it's endless. It's, I get all kinds of answers. I'm glad you developed that. And what is this? What's your take on this? Can humans think without language?
Oh, I think sure. What?
Yeah.
But then the question becomes, what's language?
Yeah.
Can they think without interchange? I before there was written language, before there was a spoken language you could write down.
Yeah.
I'm sure people functioned. You just. I mean, I always get a kick. One of the things I think is unfortunate about the history of film scholarship is that when French theory came in the 80s, now everybody could write about film in new ways, but they forgot to watch film.
That's a good point.
And so 16 millimeter died as we were using it. We didn't even think that it couldn't, you know what I mean? So anyway.
Well, this is Chomsky. Language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is.
Yeah.
Scott, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Well, I don't really have an answer for that. I don't know that I don't think we're ever without something like language.
Yeah.
We can't take a walk and not think.
Yeah.
And if we're thinking, since we could enunciate something of what we're thinking, I don't see.
But I'm saying you're at the story and you're talking with the clerk and the communication breaks down. What do you do?
Well, you find another way to communicate.
Yeah.
You point.
Right. Gestures is the one I get the most. Yeah. Pointing. Well, your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
The distinction in these concepts is really tricky, I think.
Yeah.
We can't not be feeling beings. And I don't think we can not be thinking beings.
Right.
Right? I mean, both things we're all those things. You couldn't ask the question if we weren't all those things.
Well, we invented the words thinking and feeling, but as you said, they're so connected, you can't separate them, but we think we can because we invented the words. So Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. And I'm like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off? And people meditate, go, okay, now think about not thinking. And there's a bumper sticker on my street, and on the car, it says, don't believe everything you think. And I'm like, well, you could say, don't believe everything you feel.
Yeah.
So here's two from Alan Turing in the 50s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
Well, all respect to Alan Turing. Again, I'm not sure what the soul is.
Yeah.
If the soul is not our thoughts and feelings, say that question again.
Is thinking a function of the soul?
If you say so.
Very good.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah. The second Turing question is, can machines think?
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an assumption that, certainly machines can calculate.
Yeah.
Whether they can think in the sense that thinking is also feeling, I don't know.
Yeah. Do you more Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Um, I I don't feel like I pursue.
Yeah. See.
I feel like I got this feels so lucky and in a way privileged and blah blah blah, but lucky. I I love doing the things I do. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just I don't have to work at it. I don't struggle with it. It doesn't torture me. I just am at a point in my life where everything I do, I like doing.
It's beautiful. See, that's what I like, Scott, is you get it. I'm for us. Change the verb, change the noun. The question is not so important. It's just as a prompt to get us to talk. So here's the next one is, does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Well, it seems to me that as when we they pull us out of the womb and slap us on the behind, we're already functioning at that point. We don't have
Yeah.
any way to make clear to somebody else. Well, we make clear that that hurt,
Yeah.
and that I don't know where the fuck I am right now, but we're already both things. We're feeling and thinking, and
Yeah.
at a very rudimentary level.
Yeah. Well, that's, New York Magazine just had an article, I don't know, in the last year. Can humans think a dream inside the womb, or do you have to be outside the womb and have experience to be able to dream? And I mean, it's sort of like, is that consciousness? Are we conscious, or do we detect it in consciousness is there everywhere? Are we creating consciousness or are we detecting it? You know?
I think we're coming to grips with it. When we're in the
Yeah.
womb, there must
Yeah.
be something going on in the womb. It's like it reminds me of those stories about when people were trying to find the Northwest Passage and they got frozen in the ice and ran out of light.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, their minds produced incredible light. So
Wow.
I'm thinking we're in the womb, and I'm sure there are things going on in the brain. I
Yeah.
don't know if we would have once we're in this part of living, we don't have words for that. We
Yeah.
don't remember that, but I think we can't not be sensing things when we're in the
Yeah.
womb, right?
Yeah. That's that. Robin Williams called it womb service. And Captain Beefheart said, I want to go back in. Once he popped out, he says, I'm going back in. But it is, Frank Lloyd Wright's mom put up pictures of buildings in the room when she was pregnant. So
Is that right?
yeah, and the picture, well, it could have been her desire for him to be an architect went through the brain and into him, or did the pictures, the
Yeah,
atmosphere, the environment seep in through the skin? Who knows? Well,
yeah.
here's Audre Lorde, the poet. You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Man, these theoretical questions. I did a book that was inspired by pragmatism,
Yeah.
the sort of history of you you do what you're doing and you learn from what you're doing.
Yeah.
I
Well, it's really the question, Scott.
these all seem like metaphors for me. So I
Well,
they're
no, metaphor is an important word. You just didn't see. McLuhan was all about inventing new metaphors and new questions. But really, the question, and this clarifies our interview, our discussion from this point on better, is the question really is what tool do you most gravitate towards, whether it's tangible or not? And you can apply Audre Lorde's quote if you want, but you can apply the word new if you want. So it's really, you put them in the context you want. It's basically, what tool do you most gravitate towards?
I write.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I watch, but I watch in order to write.
Yeah.
And I write in order to hold on to what I watch, I guess.
Yeah, that's to hold on. That's a great verb. So the follow-up is, Scott, what new toy do you suggest? What toy do you gravitate towards?
If you had told me when I was a kid that when I had nothing to do, I would probably write something. I mean, I don't really think that way.
That's fine.
I don't really have a toy.
That's fine. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Well, I'm at an age where I worry about how long I have to live.
Yeah.
And I'm not really, I seem fine. I'm in reasonably good health. But sooner or later, it's like, so I have those thoughts. The morning thoughts are always the stuff you have to do.
Yeah.
And you actually get through all this stuff again.
Yeah.
But the night thoughts, I am a person who my head hits the pillow and I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't toss and turn.
Well, that's good. That's important.
Yeah. I mean, I used to, but I just, Pat finds me really weird on this thing. I put my head on the pillow, I'm out.
That's good.
So
McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might learn to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Scott, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Do we ignore them?
Well, you answered a question with a question. You win. That's what this series is all about. But I'm saying maybe we're artists. We don't, but say some people ignore what artists are really saying, not the surface of the artist's message, but the deeper. Why do some people ignore some of the deeper messages of artists?
I think it's a matter of how much time you have.
Yeah.
I was a philosophy minor in undergraduate school, and I still find philosophical thinking it's like a game, a word game to me. And I know I want to, I mean, this is sort of relevant for me in my work in particular. I know that I want to write about a film or interview a filmmaker when I can't stop watching the film, period.
Nice. Yeah.
There's nothing else involved in it. I never decide. I mean, a friend told me one time that this filmmaker hates me because I've not interviewed him. And I didn't decide not to interview him. I don't make a decision. I find that I'm looking at something and I want to look at the other things and I want to look at it again. And then that just happens. I'm not creating a canon consciously, and I can't do any work if I don't trust my sort of inner need, whatever it is, what I'm drawn to, what I can't leave alone.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Do artists have moral obligation?
Yeah, but not necessarily moral obligations that everyone would agree about,
Yeah.
I don't, I mean, I just don't force myself. It feels immoral to force myself to write on a certain person because they represent, I just can't do that.
Yeah.
And it feels like morality, but I don't know what it is. It's just,
Yeah.
I know it allows me to work and I love to work.
Yeah.
And so I don't question it. I just let myself, find my way.
Beautiful. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I'm a little more afraid of old ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, I was um, about 2, 3 years ago, I discovered sort of out of the blue for me, actually, J.P. Snedecki. I don't know if you know him,
Yeah.
filmmaker.
No, I know him. Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
He wrote to me to say that I'm mentioned in a video essay by Leno Galabert Laine, this video essayist from France.
Yeah.
Uh, and I thought, oh, I'm quoted, and my first thought was, oh, I hope it's not really bad.
Yeah.
Uh, so I went to her website. I should say I went to their website, and I looked up the piece, and um, I got totally fascinated with this new way of making media.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't want to, I didn't expect to, but it felt to me like 1975 again somehow.
Yeah.
And so I, I get offended a little bit by the attempt to make a previous moment, cultural moment, the moment.
Yeah.
My PhD dissertation advisor, who was I remember him saying, I'm the world expert on a Nobel Prize winner, which was John
Yeah.
Steinbeck.
Yeah.
He never moved beyond John Steinbeck.
Yeah.
He thought he would say that American literature ended at 1940.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, or 1950, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't think avant-garde film ended at 1975, or you know what I mean?
No.
It's just constant. I mean, my newest book, Comprehending Cinema, is my admitting that most of the stuff that seems to me to be really interesting and avant-garde doesn't emerge out of the world that's considered avant-garde filmmaking, though I still respect that work. I mean, I
Yeah.
love that, but
Good.
but I'm glad for new things.
That's good. We're going to get into filmmaking soon. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
I can, because I'm a little bit obsessed with it, and I'm not even sure I believe myself completely, but I think this is true.
Yeah.
I don't remember childhood movies. I'm sure I saw the Disney stuff.
Yeah.
My grandmother lived, I'd be at my grandmother's many weekends, and she lived one block from a theater in a little town called Nazareth, Pennsylvania. And so I would go to and see whatever was playing. I believe I saw The Searchers there.
Yeah.
I couldn't guarantee it, but I know I saw Gone with the Wind there.
Yeah.
Because the scene where they cut off the guy's leg
Yeah.
who had gangrene stuck with me my whole life somehow. I don't
Yeah.
want to do that. But the experience that I always think of as the pivotal experience that made me be in love with the movies was my parents suggested to me when I was about 10 or 11, that I go downtown to the State Theater. They had never suggested I go alone to a movie before, and see this film was playing. And I never heard of it. I didn't know anything about it. There was no way to know anything about it. It was about a giant ape. I could see that from a poster when I walked into the theater, and it was King Kong.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, this looks like it could be scary. I don't even know where I got that idea. And I know where I sat. It had a center and then two side seats. And I sat on the side, 2 rows from the back of the theater so I could run out if I was too scared and nobody would see me.
And you stayed the whole time or you did run out?
Well, it was a pivotal moment for me. The film was kind of, for a 10 or 11, 9, whatever I was, all this business on the ship with Fay Ray learning to scream, it was boring to me because nothing was happening,
Yeah.
So they get to the island and they discover the village and the natives, and now it's a little more interesting. And then Ann Darrow gets kidnapped by the natives, and you go into this ritual with this music going and this gigantic celebration. And I'm like, and then the phallic thing comes out and opens the gate. The gate swings open. That's the same wall that's in Intolerance, by the way.
Wow.
And they take Ann Darrow out and hook her up on the sacrificial altar. And then they all run back in and they close that phallic thing, close the door. Yeah. And then there's the witch doctor on the top of the wall telling the guy to hit the gong. And right then there's dead silence for like 8 seconds.
Wow.
The most powerful moment of silence I ever remember in a movie.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, and then the witch doctor goes, hit the gong again, and hits the gong. And now there's this sound. And I got up. I got partway out of my seat, getting ready to run. I didn't know what was coming. And I had the urge, I think this is true. I had the urge to yell to the theater, get out while there's still time. And then here comes King Kong tearing through the trees, going over and very gently loosening the grip on Ann Darrow's arms.
Yeah.
Picking her up carefully, saying this to the group and walking into the woods. And I always think he walked in there with me too.
Oh my God.
I was on board for life.
Woo!
And my parents sent me to the movies because I was always drawing dinosaurs, so.
Oh my God.
So that is my earliest conscious loving, and it was also something that taught me that movies could teach you courage.
Oh, wow. That's the beauty.
I had to stay to see it. I didn't want to run out. So anyway.
That was really beautiful, Scott. That's what I'm after, is to get deeper. You painted a picture which I really could see in my brain. And I love that you put it into a context that I've done many times at screenings in discussion groups. I say, tell me the first time a movie had an impact on you. What venue was it at? On your cell phone or in a big movie palace? So I have to tell you mine really quick because you'll get a kick out of it. Flint, Michigan. My mom takes me to a classic old 20s movie theater to see Bambi, and I fall asleep. And then Harry Smith, then I studied film for 60 years, and Harry Smith says, the purpose of cinema is to put you to sleep. And then you go to Yoko, who's behind on your poster. She says, if you dream a dream alone, it's a dream. If you dream a dream with other people, it's reality. So that was reality for you. You learned that this moving image could teach me courage. Yeah. And it shows you the power, the magic of movies.
Yeah. I mean, part of it too, I look back on it. I've tried to use King Kong in my classes, but King Kong on the screen has to be the size he is within the action of the movie.
Yeah.
If he's any smaller than that, it's like the Star Wars films. If you see Star Wars stuff on TV, you can see the little models.
No, every movie is that. I mean, we've just mutated. It's sad. But is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
I'm an only child. And I'll say this because I wish he could hear me, but my father was child of the Depression. He was getting ready to go to college. I think he wanted to be a coach. But he graduated, I think at 16, which was young to graduate from high school back in those days. And he he was a factory worker for a while. Then he worked his way up to being a personnel manager in a small factory, and then he was plant manager of that factory. And then Pfizer bought that factory. The factory made the paint that you put along the bottom of warships, that red paint to keep them from rusting. And at the end of his life, he was um, head of labor relations for Pfizer.
Yeah.
36,000 employees, no college education. He figured out how to do all that stuff by himself. I never gave him 1 second of credit, and he never made me pay for having the advantages he didn't have.
Wow.
When I was an English major, he was upset. In fact, when I came home after getting my PhD in literature, he said, you know, you could have a career in personnel management, because that was something he knew. But he was never, he taught me to try to be generous.
Yes.
In a personal sense. You know what I mean? I'm happy when my colleagues are doing well.
Yeah.
He taught me that jealousy was just not an emotion that made any sense to have.
Wow. Same question. So articulate and concise, Scott. I appreciate that. Now, the same question outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what specifically was the impact?
This is a kind of a weird one, but it just flashes into my mind. I'm a sophomore in college in a fraternity.
Yeah.
Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity at DePaul University. And my roommate is a freshman, and he has a favorite painter.
Yeah.
I had never known a boy who had a favorite painter.
Yeah.
The idea, it was Paul Klee yet.
Yeah.
Not a painter that a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, you know what I mean? He had a favorite painter. And I know that his IQ was 189 or something. So he was a brilliant kid. And I thought, oh, art is something that boys can. I mean, he was a real guy.
Yeah.
Athlete. He knew karate and blah, blah, blah. He stood up and argued with professors in class, all that kind of stuff. But he had a favorite painting.
Yeah.
And the idea that you could surround, that you could engage with art in that way.
Yeah.
Was transformative for me.
Really good. So
later in life, I tried to make contact with him. He had gone into brain science.
Wow.
At Yale, and then I think he was a bit of a loner. I mean, I couldn't get him. He was much more important to me than I was to him.
Wow.
So, but I do think about that as somehow transformative. It's just, men can like art.
Yeah.
You know?
It's really, really beautiful. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
We were United Church of Christ Protestant Christians. Yeah.
Wow. Do you pray?
In the way, please. I mean, I do that much. I don't seriously pray.
Yeah. That's like a woman a couple weeks ago said, yeah, I pray for parking places. But it is an interesting question. One person said that's too personal, but it's amazing. If God does exist, Scott, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Gerry, I would like him to say, you did okay.
Yeah. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Oh, I think there's evil people.
Yeah. Well, the hidden question really is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up, Scott. A few modern thinkers, Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question, Scott, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower him.
I feel that all the time with the president.
Yeah.
I resist looking at him. I resist
Yeah.
listening to him. I think he is Hitler reborn.
Yeah.
And I hope somebody kills him.
Yeah. And so, how do you advise, say your son comes to you, someone's bullying me. How do you advise, what would you say to him?
Well, I've never been in a fight in my life. Because I never understood the point of the fight.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was with Patricia, my second marriage, her older son was like 13 or 14, and he was getting bullied on a street where we had moved to. And I just said, you have to stand up for yourself, and, it'll pass. Yeah. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know whether that was the intelligent thing to say, but he did get past it.
Yeah.
And same thing with my other boys as well. I just never myself understood, okay, if we have a physical fight and I win, what does win mean?
Yeah.
Do I have to kill you to really win? And what happens then? I never got it. I never got the point of physically fighting.
That's amazing, because what you're touching on is what a youngin told me is the best warriors are the ones that don't fight the fight. They get around it. But this is interesting because Nassim Taleb said something, and you just touched on it. You must have ESP. He says games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. And Gregory Bateson says, well, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, I did something morally and socially wrong? So it's basically, what do we do? Does punishment work? Does rehabilitating work? What's the next step?
Yeah. I mean, clearly rehabilitation can work.
Yeah.
That seems very obvious. I think the idea of games, I think all that's very important. I mean,
yeah,
I was an athlete. I was a wrestler.
Yeah.
And I was a wrestler, but I didn't care if I won, generally speaking. I didn't want anyone I already knew to beat me. And so I was resolute in not lose. I was resolute in wanting to be on the team.
Yeah.
But I didn't care whether I won really or not.
Yeah.
And I have a vivid memory of being in a wrestling match with a kid from East St. Louis, I think. And his elbow came around and hit me in the face, and he whispers to me, "Sorry." And I whisper back to him, "No problem."
Wow, that is good.
So it's fighting just seems, I can see, I certainly hope the president doesn't give away Ukraine to Putin.
Yeah.
I see fighting in that kind of circumstance. I think I would be able to do it because there would be something at stake that I couldn't allow to not, you know what I mean? I didn't want to have happen, but person to person, I also never got bullied. And I don't know why, actually.
Well, I wrote an essay recently called Can Art Stop War? And it's based on Maria Gambudis and her spawning Riane Eisler's book, The Chalice and the Blade. And it's basically, most people think we're hardwired for violence or fighting or, protecting. And she say, no, we're more hardwired for cooperation.
Absolutely.
And partnership, you know. So James,
I would double down on that and say, I can imagine joining with other people to fight for something important.
Yeah.
But for me personally, to be in a fight with somebody has no meaning to me.
Stupid. Yeah. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He says, why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism.
Yeah.
Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, I mean, they're not just acting out life. That is their living life. Right? I mean, my writing is my living life.
Yeah.
And in a sense, my going to the movies. I mean,
Yeah.
I would go the other way around. Why do I just have to sit looking out my window when I can go to a movie?
Dude, you're one of the best answers I've ever had on that question.
I mean, I think both things,
Yeah.
you know, we like both things.
Yeah. That's George Carlin. George Carlin said, whatever happened to letting kids stare out the window?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My cats stare out the window all day long. It's like
Yeah.
a CinemaScope movie for them, you know?
Well, you touched on a lot of this, and I want to ask you, Scott, where's your tipping point? Because really, the two main things you are now is a writer. You've written over 20 books. You're an author, and you're an educator. Where's that tipping point where you said, oh, I want, my calling is to be an educator. My calling is to be a writer.
I think both are the same thing.
Yeah.
I teach my classes, and my writing is my teaching.
Yeah.
And I said to somebody the other day, I don't plan to retire. I'm way past retirement age already.
Yeah.
I want to drop dead in front of a class.
Yeah.
You know?
You know who? Let me interrupt, Scott. You know who said that? That's a Kurosawa. He wanted to die on the movie set and go, cut, boom.
I know exactly right. I'd like to go down.
But I mean, where's that tipping point? There is a combo because you're talking math, philosophy, you're playing sports, your dad's saying go into, or, your dad's the engineering idea. Where's that tipping point? You go, that's my calling.
It was my calling. It called to me. I didn't decide to do it. I remember as an undergraduate, I thought I wanted to be a writer. And I remember writing a story. It was like a sci-fi story about cats taking over the world, Yeah. I remember reading and thinking, I can't do this. I'm never going to be a writer. I don't have the imagination to be a writer.
Yeah.
And I don't have the confidence to be a writer.
Yeah.
And now I've written, 22 books. Wow. Which seems like a lot of books to people, It
is a lot. I just interviewed the guy who wrote the book for the Dylan film, Elijah Wald. It's based on his book. He wrote 13 books, and I goes, Scott wrote 23. Wow, that's a lot of books, and they're great books, Scott. I know. I have some on my shelf, but it's really
that Dylan film is amazing.
Well, I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I'm saying a screenwriting teacher actually told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're writing a book?
Well, this is pretty clear for me. It's funny. I said this the other day when I was talking about Dylan, because for me, a complete unknown was like the soundtrack to my life. And right in the middle of it is that song, You Got to Serve Somebody.
Yeah.
And I remember that song was popular at the moment when I was trying to figure out how to be a scholar, because my PhD thesis and dissertation were on Hemingway. And to write about Hemingway's writing, who does that serve? What's that for? I mean, if just other dorky Hemingway scholars would read this stuff, I couldn't figure out how to do it. And when I realized that here in central New York, I was living 20 miles from Hollis Frampton and an hour and a half from Binghamton, where all sorts of film stuff was going on, and Hudson Valley. When I realized that there were these filmmakers making brilliant work right around me, and that if I did write about them, it mattered to them. It mattered that the work would get to be better known. That found me as something I could do.
Wow.
And so everything I've done since then is to make their work available, to help make it something that people know about.
Well, that's the follow-up is similar, Scott. I appreciate you're concise and articulate. This is Duchamp. There's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your reader when you're writing your book?
I'm very serious about trying to write well. I mean, I taught American literature for 27 years.
Yeah.
And my two favorite writers still are Hemingway and Faulkner.
Yeah.
Couldn't be more different. But Hemingway taught me how to write.
Yeah.
And in a certain way, Faulkner did also. So I try to write so that people like reading it.
Yeah.
I am very conscious of that. Even if it's an analysis of a film, I want it to be I want it to be fun to read.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it is, but I'm very dedicated to that idea anyway.
Well, it must be because people keep giving you money to write books, and they know you're a successful writer, and publishers, I know it's hard, but here's you have so much ESP because you use the words in the net for the next question in that last talk, what you just said. And this is actually McLuhan in 1957. It's misleading to suppose there's any basic difference between education and entertainment. It's like setting up a distinction between didactic and lyric poetry on the ground that one teaches and the other one pleases. However, it's always been true that whatever pleases teaches more effectively. So in regards to your approach to education, is that true? And could you just suss that out? Whatever pleases teaches more effectively.
I think I would put it on a different register.
Yeah.
Because my teaching strategy, I've gotten to a point in my life where if I could just curate 3-hour sessions of films without having to say anything, I'd be most happy.
Yeah.
Because I like having students get set up for one thing and then having something very different ram into it.
Yeah.
So I don't want my students to be comfortable.
Yes.
Watching. I mean, I had an interesting thing happen a couple of years ago. It's the only time it's ever happened. I do an intro to film class that I counted there are 103 films in the class. Somebody had asked me what my favorite film is, and I finally thought my favorite film is my intro class, the meta film that I've made out of all these favorite films.
Beautiful.
And at one point, I usually show, after I show Shadow of a Doubt, Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt.
Yeah.
Knowing that later I'm going to show The Searchers.
Yeah.
And after the Hitchcock film and Ford Apache, John Ford, I show either Blood of the Beasts or Night and Fog.
Yeah.
Because they don't see it coming,
Yeah.
And a couple times ago when I did it, people were upset with me. A bunch of people in one class were upset with me for not preparing them for Night and Fog. And I was so shocked that they had made themselves the victims in this screening.
Right.
It took me till the next class to say to them, sorry, but you were prepared for 18 years for Night.
That's it. You're a smart man. That was
I've never seen anything that wasn't made to please you.
Yes.
That's a film that's made to shock you.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to prepare you to be shocked.
You are so smart. That's funny because I've asked that question for years, the difference between entertainment and education, and whatever pleases teaches more effectively. It wasn't until like a few months ago, someone goes, no, whatever displeases teaches more effectively. So it's both pleasing and displeasing, but it is this difference between education and entertainment. I mean, what's his name? Tom Anderson quotes Lynch saying, well, if you're watching a shitty movie, you can still look at the lamps. I'm like, I don't, so I know you can look into watching stupid films and go, blah, blah, blah. But this is, and I love what you said too, was your meta film. That's like, what's your favorite Kubrick film? I goes, easy, Room 237. It has all 13 Kubrick films in it, so I know that's fun, the meta film. But this is, again, McLuhan saying everything we invent extends some humanness, like knife and fork extends our teeth, shutter and a camera extends our eyelid, and then non-tangibles, say religion or philosophy, might extend consciousness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Whether it's keyboard or a pen, what humanness does the writing utensil extend for you?
It extends memory.
Yeah.
It extends curiosity.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still learning from films I've taught 100 times.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an instance that's a really funny instance. I teach the kid, Chaplin's the kid, every semester in intro. Yeah. And there's a moment when Chaplin can't get rid of the kid at the beginning of the thing, and he sits down and he looks at you and contemplates, should I put this baby should I just drop it in the sewer?
Yeah.
And he looks at you, and then he reaches in and his fingers pricked by the pin, saying, please love and care for this orphan child. Yeah. And he decides to keep the child. He walks over to his apartment building, and there's some women standing around, and they say, is that yours? And he says, yes. What's his name? They say. He walks into the building, comes out about 10 seconds later, 5 seconds later, and says, John.
Yeah.
I never understood. I thought, oh, he's thinking up a name. No, he's trying to figure out whether it's male or female. He's got to open it up and see what it's got,
That's great. Yeah, no, it is an amazing.
I never thought of it. And I thought, oh my God.
Yeah.
I've seen that film all my life.
Yeah. Right. We talk about Venice, California. I mean, it's basically, I think, Charlie's second film, auto races, is shot right over here at the dog park, 5 blocks from my house. And I always thought he was making fun of the cameraman. And sometimes I watch it and goes, where's that shot? I swear he was making fun of the cameraman in it. But it is amazing how even short films, you can't memorize every little subtlety, and there's many deeper levels to it. And that goes along with this, Scott. McLuhan said there's no such thing as a good or a bad film. It's a good or a bad viewing experience. Any comment?
Well, I mean, there's some films that I'm going to live and die before I find them to be interesting.
Yeah.
But I had an answer. I popped into my. Do that question again.
Yeah. There's no such thing as a good or bad film. It's a good or bad viewing experience.
Yeah. Okay. And this goes back to a previous question. I believe that I learn slowly which films continue to offer me something.
Yeah.
I don't go to cinema for entertainment. I watch sports for entertainment because I don't need to know anything about it. And I don't need to think about it afterward. I can't even remember who won the game.
Yeah.
But film, if you had said, what's your second King Kong-esque story, I would say it was 8.5.
Wow.
I went to see as a fall semester senior at DePaul University. A professor had advised me to go see it. I thought it was garbage. I thought it was
wow.
I thought it was terrible. In my imagination, I yelled to the audience, "You phonies!" I'm sure I didn't. because I wasn't that courageous, but I hated it. I came back to my room and regaled my fraternity brothers with what a piece of shit this Italian film was. I see it 5 years later in graduate school
Yeah.
and realized that I hadn't realized it begins in a dream.
Yeah.
That had never been possible in a film. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell the difference between dream and reality. I
Yeah.
couldn't make sense of it. And so 5 years later, I'm totally taken by it.
Yeah.
Now I looked at it not so long ago
Yeah.
because it was on a channel that I could record, and I watched the first half hour of it. I don't like it anymore. It's a little bit like Citizen Kane. It's too involved with itself.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was like, so that film taught me you could hate something and then learn to really admire it. And I think I mean, my students, they're flooded with imagery all the time.
Yeah.
They need to be able to stop and get a hold of themselves.
Yeah.
I usually teach one of the Benning films, 10 Skies or 13 Lakes, at the end of my intro class, because now they get to sit through 10-minute shots and see if they can live through it, you know?
Yes.
So anyway.
No, I've shown, what's his name? Morgan Fisher's 11 minutes of staring at a clock. And I don't even have to show it. I just explain it to someone and they go, I've done that. I've stared at a clock for 11 minutes. So that's it. This is an amazing McLuhan update. Mid-career, he started with the medium as a massage, 40 years, 1940, 1980. He got famous with the medium as a message, medium as a massage. Yeah. Mid-career, he updated it to the user is the content. So the 8.5, that film didn't change. You changed, Scott. And then you're the user. You are the content, your interpretation. Now I love it. Now I hate it. And yet it's more like, how does it affect your, this is along with the next question. This is where we're exploring. Peter Greenaway said, cinema is much too rich a medium to be left to storytellers. Are experimental filmmakers doing something completely different, or are they telling stories a different way?
I have a good Morgan Fisher story, actually.
Yeah, please.
Morgan Fisher is the final interview in my first book of interviews.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bookend Frampton. He's the first interview in that book with Morgan.
Yeah.
The last to be Eastern and Western.
Yeah.
New York versus whatever Morgan is. LA for sure.
Yeah, it's Santa Monica. Yeah, LA. Yeah.
So when I'm working on that book, I'm making in those days you had the pilgrimage to see film. So I'm in New York a lot, in Binghamton a lot. I was in California, or no, I'm sorry. I saw that a show of Morgan's films was going to happen at Buffalo, University of Buffalo. I'm 240 miles from there. So I drive down the thruway and run around the campus trying to find this little screening. And I finally get in and sit down, and the film I'm looking at is Phi Phenomenon.
Yeah. Which
is the clock without a second hand. You know what I mean? I'm looking at that fucking clock. And I did find that pretty amusing, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, no, Morgan's an intense filmmaker, and so is Hollis Frampton, and it's great. This, I mean, you're probably the greatest scholar beside P. Adam Sidney of experimental film in the world. And, this is like, are these people telling stories a different way? And I know it's a stupid question. You get what I'm after. Are they telling stories a different way, or are they doing something completely different? Because just let me suss it out for one more second, is Tony Conrad's The Flicker. That's not storytelling per se. Me and you could have a story go through our head when we're watching it, back to users' content, but it's not storytelling per se. So your take on Greenaway's quote, cinema's much too rich a medium to be left to storytelling, and this whole pursuit.
I feel that body of work from The Flicker through Zorn's Lemma or Sue Friedrich's Stinker Swimmer, however you want to,
Yeah.
it's really still going. For me, that is actual film theory.
Yeah.
That's the real film theory. You go in, you turn the theatrical space and the theatrical time into a theoretical space.
Yeah.
And wavelength, serene velocity, all those films are what writing about French theory took over from, and I think destroyed. I don't read much film theory, never have. I mean, is film a language? I don't know, you know. And what's a language, you know?
Yeah.
What constitutes a film? You know, you never, that's a word game. You never finish.
It's a word game. Well, Scott, this is Andrew Noren said, if you put one frame after another, that is narrative. So, you know, it is.
The flicker has a very killer structure, right?
Yeah.
It sends you up into almost brain explosion and then denouements down.
Yeah.
But it shows that it shows what the theater can do, you know, what cinema can do in a theatrical space that it's never done before, except in the Frankenstein movies when they're creating the monster and it's always during a thunderstorm. You know what I mean? Yeah. They use flicker as something to involve the audience. So Conrad just takes that out and theorizes that. So it's
really beautiful what you said, because here's Hollis Frampton. Narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. The question is, can you forget to die?
You can forget worrying about dying.
Yeah.
You know? I don't think you can forget to die.
Yeah.
Wish you could.
If me and you were starting the Ann Arbor Film Festival over 60 years ago with George Manupelli, the basic question is, do you want it to be more inclusive or more exclusive? And let me set it up, Scott. Keep in mind that a fraction of the films are animation and documentaries, but it's mainly experimental films. I asked Chick Strand about this years ago. She said when she was starting Canyon Cinema with Bruce, they were trying to recreate their 11-cent movie-going experience by showing a newsreel, a cartoon, and then show an experimental film. And then Brakhage came along and says, don't show that other stuff, just show experimental film. So, you know, what do you think? Should we be more inclusive or more exclusive?
Inclusive of the most interesting work of all kinds.
Yeah.
I had an experience. There was Hamilton College, which is where I teach now, was the prestige college in this area. And I taught at Utica College. And I started to go up there because there was a guy that came out of the Binghamton program teaching there. And at one point, I remember showing him my syllabus, which included Brakhage and, you know, Frampton and Keaton and Hitchcock and John Ford and, you know, and he was upset with me because I didn't just teach avant-garde film.
Wow.
I remember thinking, you're insane. That's insane. Yeah. Buster Keaton? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So
no, that's the problem. I mean, we've ghettoized or marginalized experimental film. And then I'm saying that, again, you anticipate the next question. What's the services and disservices of marginalizing it? Jackson Pollock was on the cover of Life magazine in 1949. Regular people could start forming an aesthetic on experimental painting.
Yeah.
Bruce Conner and Maya Deren weren't on the cover of Life magazine. So I have a bias. I call it's generally privileged, entitled, rich art kids who develop an avant-garde aesthetic and dominate experimental film. Any comment?
Well, it's also rich, et cetera, people that dominate Hollywood. But I
That is true.
I
But I mean, that's it. Yeah. I mean,
David James says a very sweet. I have a new book out that David wrote a foreword to,
yeah.
and he said that I've made a contribution to film types of film that, after Maya Deren, we think of as cinema that you made for love, not money.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether Maya Deren made Meshes of the Afternoon for love or money, but I mean,
Yeah.
she didn't make any money from it any more than I make money from my books.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I mean, I loved the Dylan film.
Yeah.
I saw it 4 times and snuck in.
Wow.
Paid to see it 3 times, snuck into a 4th. So I don't have boundaries.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of my favorite films of the last couple of years is #Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
I get an email from these guys in Idaho saying, we have this 11-hour film about the Mona Lisa room at the Louvre. Would you like to see it? And I'm thinking, are you out of your fucking mind? I don't have 11 hours to watch it. And then a little while later, I'm thinking, you know, actually, I am exactly that kind of person that would watch an 11-hour film. It's killing me that I haven't seen The Clock.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we could go in The Clock, but did you see #?
I did.
All 11 hours?
They wrote to me because they must have felt like something I've written that I might be open to this. So I think to myself, all right, I'm going to give it 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's masses of people in the Mona Lisa room trying to get selfies with the Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
Shot in slow motion.
Yeah.
I watched the whole thing as a meditation over a period of a week. It's
over a week.
It's like my bridge doing a group of people drawn to a painting, you know?
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to look at, actually.
Right.
There's a musical soundtrack that's perfect for it.
And you saw it on your small screen at home?
I did.
Okay, but hook me up, because I'd love to interview these guys on my podcast, whoever they are. That's beautiful, because it reminds me of another film. Before we talk about The Clock for a second, did you see the film where the kid, well, a younger person, edited every word in Wizard of Oz in alphabetical order? So he re-edited the Wizard of Oz, which we all know inside and out, and in the alphabetical way of, that's unbelievable. It drives people nuts, but I love to show it. And once in a while I would show it. Yeah.
Do you have a link?
I'll send you the information about that too. We'll trade info. The Wizard of Oz. I mean, it's endless, but The Clock is very interesting because, Christian Marclay went nuts making it. First of all, read the New Yorker article, and, now he's showing it again, and it's important. But, I think what people in the film world don't get is that The Clock is like, oh, wow, I know that clip. That's from Katharine Hepburn. Oh, that's Betty Boop. Oh, that's a TV show. They kind of think it's just this compilation clip. He bleeds the sound. Yeah. Have you watched any of The Clock?
No.
Oh, I mean, I don't want to overpraise it. The best way is to read Zadie Smith's review of The Clock at some point. See some of it when you can. See it as much as you can. You can watch some clips on YouTube, but Zadie Smith wrote a review in New York Book of Reviews or some highbrow literature magazine of The Clock. And I said, reading that is the closest thing to reading Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. It's a good example of that, because The Clock is amazing because it's 24 hours and it's doing something different. It's keeping time. Yeah. So when I went for a couple hours with my friend in a big auditorium at the County Museum of Art in LA, I says, well, how long do you want to stay? And he says, a couple hours. I says, okay. And so we never had to look at our clocks to see when the 2 hours was up. The movie was telling us it.
Yeah.
But I look forward to hearing your reaction. So this is Michael Apted. 40 years ago, I asked him, Why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but in the 80s, it flourished to the point where MTV, Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV.
Yeah.
And so my question is asked with a bias, Scott. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
I think it's a mix. I'm not sure we're not brainwashed to not take in information.
Yeah.
When stuff is coming at you a mile a minute, you can't hold on to it. And I always include some very slow films in my courses. I mean, I love film title poem. Do you know that?
Yeah. So who's that by? Anyways, I'll look it up. Yeah. Film title poem. Go ahead.
An LA artist, in fact, Jennifer West.
Okay. I'll look it up. Yeah.
Do you not know that film?
I don't think I've seen it. Yeah. But tell me.
This is one of those cases where somebody is identified with the art world and not with the cinema world.
Oh, right.
And her film is remarkable. She tried to remember every film she had ever seen, and then alphabetized the title cards for all those films.
Yeah.
And it's rather like The Clock, I think. Very interesting. And what's that?
How long is it approximately?
It's an hour.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's like Zorn's Lemma.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's a film you need to see as an LA guy.
I want to. Yeah.
And she was fun to work with, and I don't know why my computer is sitting on this book that's about her that no avant-garde filmmaker ever had this big a book. This shiny is, only people in the art world get this kind of thing. But she's somebody you need to know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Scott, a lot, because that's a big issue. I mean, I had Craig Baldwin here talking about this years ago, and all these people, John Smith. I've interviewed a lot of the people you've interviewed over the year, and it's like, oh yeah, or the guy who teaches at Cal Arts now. It's like, how'd you get into art galleries? How are you getting people to sell your files now, whatever, a link for all this money? No experimental filmmakers were making money, except now Tom Palazzolo sells his stock footage of Nazi rallies, and Reggio sells his stock footage, from Koyaanisqatsi for FedEx commercials. But it is an amazing thing. Poetry and experimental film are the only two professions you can't make a living at. You have to teach. And I had Phil Solomon in this very seat saying, I'm a professional experimental filmmaker. Yeah, I said, yeah, right. You show at Sundance, you still have to teach to make a living. Go ahead.
James Benning in Germany, he did this piece called Two Houses. He built Thoreau's house,
and because
he sold the bookcase from the Unabomber's house in his piece for enough money to buy a Mercedes and ship it back to the United States.
But again, that's exceptions. That. But again, Scott, it's curious. That's kind of the great organic purity, integrity of experimental film, that you can make a living. Now we know people, Pat O'Neill, did the Groove Tube and this or that. They worked on the side in Hollywood, but you can't really. And I mean, Stanley did it the best. He took his influence from Jordan Belson and put it in 2001, and you could have taken the Stargate sequence out of 2001 and entered in Ann Arbor as an abstract animation, and that was set. But he integrated it in telling the story, but he still didn't make a living being an experimental filmmaker. And so this is a funny little quote that I read once in the LA Times, and I'm curious your thoughts. Oh, wait, before we do it, we forgot the hidden question of the last one. Let me ask you that. Is it literally possible to multitask?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can walk and come to terms with something I want to write.
Yeah.
Because I'm walking, it gets me out of busy space.
Yeah.
So I'm getting my exercise, but I'm also, I know by the end of the walk, I will have what I need.
Yeah.
In that sense, you can. I think
Yeah.
it's hard to multitask, but
Yeah.
that's one way in which I do it, I think.
Yeah. But I liked how you answered the Michael Apted, because you said it is a mix. You know, Craig Baldwin says, yeah, you can learn to speed read, but can you really, most people say, yeah, but can you really retain and focus as well when they're shooting these images at you so fast?
Yeah.
You know, what Abel Gant's doing in 1922, get over it. Rapid montage has been here forever. But, you know, I mean, not forever, but for a long time.
Well, I think sexuality gives an answer to that, because when you're 13, you can ejaculate in about 8 seconds. But you don't want to keep doing it that way when you're older.
Very,
you know?
Very good, Scott. So here's the line I'd love you to react to that we sort of slipped into. Film as an art form has been swindled by capitalism. Any comment?
I don't think I've ever been in a moment of our culture when that seems more true to me.
Yeah.
Capitalism is filling every space, everything in, you know, you go onto the computer and you're fighting off all these ads. Everything you do, capitalism is trying to get your attention to buy something.
Yeah.
My students can't walk across campus without being on the phone. They can't have a conversation face to face.
Yeah.
They need to be paying somebody for the gift of being able to talk on the phone. You know what I mean? It's very weird. I think capitalism is really, that's where Trump comes in, I think. But it's,
well, here's the extension on that, Scott. And it's interesting. When I asked Craig Baldwin, can you comment on that? Film as an art form has been swindled by capitalism. He says, yeah, and it's our job to swindle it back. And it's like, well, that almost like, you know, that word swindle. I understand his approach because he comes out of the culture jamming, situationist, you know, surrealist Dada movement. But it is funny. One observer of this phenomenon, like what you're talking about in current days, is called TSA, tactile situation awareness. My friend describes it as if you're a bomber in a plane and your plane gets hit, you don't have time to look at every gauge and go, I've got to determine what to do to save my life. You act on a more intuitive, impulsive, what am I going to do to save my life? And my friend says what kids are doing now, they're watching TikTok, sending texts, looking at their GPS. They have a full movie screen in their car, or, you know, they're looking out the window of their Waymo, their driverless car that's driving around. They're doing many things so they don't identify with one particular medium. Whereas we grew up, hey, we're in a movie theater watching King Kong. We're identifying with one medium. So they're getting the bigger picture, the comprehensive awareness. What's your take on that? TSA, tactile situation awareness, in regards to how I feel you're talking, they can't even walk without looking at their cell phone.
Well, this is us geezers trying to reduce the reality of our lives. I mean, when I ride the subway in New York, everybody's reading. So they're on this thing, and if you look out the window, there's all this stuff going on, but they're reading.
Yeah.
I'm sympathetic to that idea, and I bitch about it a lot. But we went to the movies all the time when we were young. I mean, I'm 10 years older than you, and so it's 10 years more of that.
Yeah.
Then TV came in, and we watched TV, but we also went to the movies a lot.
Yeah.
And all that time, there are endless magazines, Life and Look, throwing photographs at us all the time. Those magazines disappeared, and other things came to replace them. But I think people, have always multi-screened. If you see the book as a screen, and read magazines and books and looked at TV and were at the movies and went to church where there were musical concerts and sermons. And, I think it's not all that different in a certain way. It seems different to us because we can't believe kids are looking at this shit. But I
agree. I agree with you. It's like the cave artists were doing the same. They had the same multitasking that we did. But I want to tell you two things. One is I like when people tell me when they show their babies, they're raised on cell phones, a magazine, they try to scroll the magazine picture. but Scott, here's a good little story that I would love to tell you. I went to see a movie at probably the best movie screen in the world. It's the Geodesic Dome at the Academy. Have you been to that Academy Muse? Dude,
I have not.
There's two theaters. So one of them is big and it's quite amazing. And I says, how could they not make the best movie theater in the world? Because it's, recently opened. And I'm seeing the Nam June Paik documentary. How appropriate, like something as good as that. And I sit down, they make an introduction, and the woman next to me, as soon as the movie starts, whips out her cell phone. So in my space, I don't say anything to her. I take and I do a gesture. I go like this, no, like with my hand. She turns to me and says, shut the fuck up. So she breaks two protocols, talking in a movie theater and using their cell phone. I knew right then, because I've dealt with this problem being a curator for 10, 20, or said cell phone started. I know what now humans have mutated. They cannot see the big picture unless they can check their Facebook during the movie. They've mutated. And I may say maybe me or you haven't mutated, but I don't want people flashing a light in front of my face when I'm watching a movie. So I knew, Scott, the only thing I could do was get up and move.
Yeah.
But my friend said, you should have called the usher. I said, no, she'll walk out of the movie theater and shoot me. It ain't going to do anything. It's going to disturb the screening. But the hidden ground, Scott, was Nam June Paik. He was teaching us always to be subversive with movies and TV. And, when Craig Baldwin made his first film and he ran into a movie theater and shot Super 8 film off the screen, then Wicked comes out a half a year ago, and that's all the kids were doing was shooting selfies and movies of Wicked being shown on the screen. So here's the avant-garde, presaging what's going to happen. So that's when you said the screen. So in studying this phenomenon, I realized we already look at two screens. I would say to my audience, we've all decided to look at one screen today for 90 minutes. If you have to use your cell phone, go in the lobby. But people go, fuck you, I'm not going to do that. But we always looked at two screens because the exit light is a light emitting screen. So we were always looking at two screens. So I know the degrees, but any thoughts on that? Sorry to go on a rant.
Well, it's something that as an educator, I deal with all the time. And I have to say, my students are very good about it.
Yeah.
They do not, they want to open their phones. And the minute a film is over, if I walk from the booth after M, which they adore, down to the front of the room, they're already on their phones.
We're already
gone,
Yeah.
And I can't really stop that. I kind of work against it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We can't stop it. And, you know, I was at USC and I saw Joshua Oppenheimer's big new fiction film. And, you know, it's a huge, and they're all film students and local film people. And, you know, I kind of want to ask, you know, what's your policy on cell phone use? And they kind of, you know, sometimes they go, please put your cell phones away. Or some old fuck in the audience like me yells, tell them to turn their cell phones off. And, you know, it drives me nuts because I was like, what am I going to do? Get up and move every 5 minutes.
I know.
But at the end, I went out and I told the young film student, you know, host, I really appreciated you saying don't use your cell phone. And, you know, I know that some people still did use it. And I said, you know, I think it's kind of sad that we've lost that way to watch a film. And one of they all sort of like, yeah, shut up, old man. And one of them said, I agree with you. One of the younger film students say, I agree that there is an aesthetic difference in this viewing experience.
Yeah.
But everybody's mutated. As soon as the titles go up, they're like, you know.
Well, I mean, people used to talk in movies too.
Yeah.
You know, so my students are pretty good about it. I'm like you. It doesn't do any good to say you disrupt. You have another kind of disruption if you're yelling at somebody.
Yeah.
That's also interfering with the viewing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, no, talking in cinemas, like, you know, you used to go to a screening in the ghetto and they would yell, don't open the door. And you didn't say, shh, you know,
that's right.
We would tolerate it. But
don't
again,
go in the basement. I remember seeing Psycho the first time. Don't go in the
basement. That's true interactive live cinema all the way. But, you know, Scott, I asked for 90 minutes and we're 90 minutes, but I would love to do a part 2 so we can really get into experimental film. I want to discuss the difference between, you know, art and science. There's so many more categories of a discussion I'd love to probe. So if we could schedule it, you know, 4 or 5 months down the line. And I really appreciate your time and energy. I appreciate all your books and your research. Thank you so much. This was really been enlightening for me.
I had a blast, Gerry.
Yeah.
I would do it again.
Great. So even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever. Thank you so much, Scott.
Okay, Gerry. Have a good day.
You too, man. Appreciate it.